Kravitz, if you could just get it about 30 seconds and stuff. Thanks.
Okay, well, it's 12 noon. Welcome, everyone. This is the third and final segment of the summer 2022 UCCS Undergraduate Research Showcase. It's something we look forward to every year. It's a great opportunity for us to hear about all the terrific work that you've been doing. I know the assignments have been challenging, but by all reports, you've been up to them. We're very pleased to offer this opportunity to participate in policy research as part of our curriculum, because we think it's a really important exposure to the process of developing evidence for policy, and also will help to sharpen our facilities at examining evidence as it applies to policy in our roles, not just as researchers or policymakers, which some of us might turn into and some of us not, but really as citizens. So congratulations on making it this far. Thank you to all of the internship hosts who've made the experiential learning part of our program, which is so critical, possible for us and our students. And let's get started.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Kravitz. So the format today will be that each student will present. After the student presents, we will take one question from the internship host site. If there is not a question from the internship host site, then we will turn that one question over to our academic team. We will have an open Q&A at the end of our session as time permits. And the last two sessions, we've had plenty of time. And so during that time, folks can go ahead, either internship host sites, audience members, and the academic team can ask questions of any of our panelists today. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So our first student today is Kellen Roy, who interned with the Office of California State Senator Scott Wiener's office.
Hello. Can you see everything?
We can hear. Oh, it's coming up right now. There, it looks great. Thank you, Kellen. We can see it.
All right. All right, ready?
Yep.
All right. Hi, my name is Kellen Roy, and I am a rising senior at UC Irvine. Effective polarization, or the gap between one's favorability of their own party and their unfavorability towards the opposing party, has rapidly increased in previous decades. For example, Donald Trump's approval rating during his presidency remained constant, with Republicans ranking him very high and Democrats rating very low, as seen in Figure 1. Knowing this, I wanted to determine how much partisan Californians hate each other, bringing me to my research question. How much does including party identifiers affect opinions towards non-controversial policies and their favorability of said parties? My hypothesis being introducing party identifiers will lead to more polarized ratings of non-controversial policies and increase effective polarization. To answer this question, I surveyed 187 California adults in a research experiment. Respondents were first asked to rank 3 non-controversial policies from strongly opposed to strongly support. The control group received no party identifiers, and the experiment group received identifiers. My first policy, for example, proposed raising fines for loud cars over the noise limit from $1,000 to $2,000, with the experiment group being told it was introduced by a Republican senator. Finally, respondents then rated the California Democratic and Republican parties on a feeling thermometer. Results from my surveys showed no correlation between party identifiers and more polarized responses, as seen in Figure 2, and there were also little changes in sentiments towards each party between the control and experiment groups, as seen in Figure 3. In conclusion, my data was inconclusive and does not support my hypotheses. For more definitive conclusions, the survey should be expanded to include more Californians. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kellen, for that great presentation. And if we can go over to our audience, and there is a question from Krista Peppercorn.
Also, make sure to keep your poster up as well.
Oh, did it? Oh, my apologies.
That's all right.
I was just wondering, did you look at any other polls that might have answered the question that you were posing, whether it's like a PPAC poll or another poll that's out there?
Yeah, I examined the ANES polls and the CCES polls, but they weren't exactly asking the questions. They were already asking questions, I guess, in more polarized issue areas such as like gun control and abortion. But I was trying to just see how much a simple introduction of party identifiers would polarize people, basically.
All right.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Kellen, for that great presentation. And thank you so much, Krista, for that question, as well as for hosting Kellen this summer. We really appreciate it.
Happy to.
All right. So our next student is Dylan Balassi, who interned with the Office of California State Assembly member Kevin Kiley this summer.
Hello, everyone. As Ms. Simmons said, my name is Dylan, and my research study was on the top 2 primary in California. In 2010, California voters enacted the top 2 primary as their new primary election system through Proposition 14. Policymakers promised it would have positive impacts on the primary election, while not considering the consequences it could have on the general election. This study serves as an investigation to see if the top 2 primary actually did have an effect on the general election in California. My hypothesis was twofold. First, we would see an overall decrease in voter participation statewide in California. And second, we would see in same party candidate general elections a lower voter participation as compared to general elections with opposing party candidates. My results or how I analyzed my first hypothesis was through a time series analysis, comparing California's voter participation statewide to other states such as Colorado and Arizona between the years 2002 and 2020. To analyze my second hypothesis, I did a large and statistical analysis, taking a look at California State Assembly to see if there was a difference in voter participation between same party and opposing party candidate general elections. In my results seen in figures 1 and 2 for my first hypothesis, I didn't find a significant association statewide in voter participation after the introduction of the top 2 primary. However, in my second analysis seen in figure 3, I did find that in the elections between 2012 and 2020, there was a decrease in the average voter participation in same party candidate elections. And after performing a t-test, I found a statistically significant association with a p-value of 0.0013. In conclusion, because I found support for my second hypothesis, my recommendation is to allow for a third candidate in the general election to participate under certain circumstances in the top 2 primary system. Thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you so much for that great presentation, Dylan. And if there is a question from the internship host site. And then if not, over to our academic team. All right, Professor Quila.
Hi, Dylan. Really nice presentation. I had a question about your suggestion of a third-party potential candidate. I guess under what circumstances would these be? What type of candidate would it be? Like would they have to file for? Like what party? How exactly would that work? I guess I'm just curious.
Yeah, I detailed my paper, just not enough time in the presentation.
Sure. Yeah. I would like to hear for sure.
So I have 4 circumstances, and the first 3 are kind of like, I guess, like foundational. Like the first circumstance is that they ran in the primary election. The second is that the top 2 primary yielded 2 people from the same party. The third is that the third candidate received the majority amount of votes for all opposing parties. So if there's like a Libertarian and a Republican, they receive like the third highest votes, majority support in the primary election. That was the best way, theoretically thinking about it, that I felt, would be the best recommendation.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the Office of California State Assembly member Kevin Kiley's office for hosting the summer. And so our next student is Kevin Johnson. And he interned this summer with the Office of California State Assembly member Kelly Sayarto.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you and we can see the presentation.
All right, then let's get into this. Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Johnson. I will be presenting a California exodus is the Golden State unattractive. Now, why would the California be unattractive? Well, my first investigation brings me to the cost of living, and I find that home prices in California are twice as much as the rest of the United States, and that housing costs are a significant factor contributing to the overall cost of living. From there, we also see that California's population has just stagnated overall. We were supposedly supposed to break 40 million, but we have not. We're still within that 30 million population mark. From the graph in figure 2, you can see that plateauing and that steep and that decline in population growth. This follows to my hypothesis that in California counties from 2010 to 2019, the greater the increase of average home price per year, the greater the decline in population growth. But as you can see from my heat maps, I have more than just 2 heat maps indicating my other 2 variables that I wanted to see, because home prices are not the entire story contributing to an individual's decision to actually move out of state. And we also see from the population that more people are moving out of the state than are coming in, contributing to that plateau. So additionally to this population growth investigation and looking at the comparison to average home price, we add in average income and the average estimated homeless population as alternative independent variables, resulting in a large in regression across 36 counties doing a multivariable analysis, specifically looking at this decrease in population compared to the increase of home prices. And the conclusion is that the home prices are not a significant factor contributing to this stagnation of population. Neither is the homeless population. But there is preliminary findings that indicate that average income per county does have a small factor contributing to people leaving. For future recommendations, a additional multivariable analysis would be perfect, adding more data concerning ideological strength of the counties or climate impact, or even additional tax information or crime rate information, as well as separating these into smaller sets, and as well as the quantitative study of those, we could do qualitative studies of actually surveys asking people what would get them to stay, what was the reason for them to move, and ultimately housing policies will not affect Californians leaving and will not mitigate that population growth. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Karen, for that presentation. And if there is a question from the internship host site. And then if not, over to our academic team. All right, Professor Butters.
All right, thank you. Great job, Kevin. I got a quick question for you here. So you said you only did 36 counties, right? So there's 58 in California. So you're missing quite a number of them. And I can see that there's some missing data on some of these figures, which I figure is why you can't, of course, do all 58 counties. But what counties are missing? Is it a non-random issue?
The main factor is the homeless population estimates. There's quite a lot of data, but this was also the mitigating factor, making me focus on 2010 to 2019 instead of that 2020 edition that I wanted to do. It's the specifically the income per county and the point in time estimates are sort of kind of off. There's not a structured system to actually get specified data for every county.
All right, thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you, Professor Butters, for that question. And also thanks to the Office of California State Assembly Member Kelly Sayarto's office. And so our next student is Rama Priyasetti, who interned with the Office of California State Governor Gavin Newsom's office.
Sorry, I think it stopped sharing for a second.
Yeah, stop sharing, but we saw it momentarily. Oh, there it is. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, as Cindy mentioned, my name is Priya Sethi, and I decided to conduct my research on the relationship between the area in which mass shootings occur and the media coverage of them. Now, there have been over 2,000 mass shootings in the past 5 years in the United States, with a disproportionate number of them impacting minority neighborhoods. So my research question asks, does media coverage of mass shootings differ based on the racial makeup of the area in which the shooting occurs? Considering the high number of mass shootings that impact communities made up of racial minorities, I hypothesize that media coverage is greater for mass shootings in communities with greater white populations. To find out, I conducted a small N study with 8 cases of mass shootings from 2019 to 2020, each with differing percentages of white populations making up the cities in which they occurred. I conducted a search on the Nexus Uni database, collecting and comparing the number of newspaper articles that covered each of those shootings. As you can see in Figure 3, areas with low white populations, such as Fresno, California, and Aurora, Illinois, had lower numbers of newspaper articles covering those shootings compared to shootings that occurred in areas with high white populations, such as Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, and Grantsville, Utah. Overall, I found a weak relationship between the racial makeup of the areas in which shootings occurred and the media coverage of them, and no conclusive findings could be made because of the small data sample used for this research. In addition, TV and social media coverage make up a big part of the media today, so I suggest further research be done to collect quantifiable data on the coverage in those avenues, as well as to further push to pass the Media Diversity Act, which pushes to involve and spotlight more minority issues like these. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Priya, for a great presentation today. And if there is a question from the internship host site. All right, and then if not, over to our academic team. All right, Dr. Kravitz.
I believe you may be muted.
Well, then you would have had to guess at my question. I'm wondering why you hypothesized that minority communities would receive less coverage, because of course with non-mass shootings, at least, it's been alleged that the media tends to provide, an overemphasis on shootings within, violence within minority communities that casts a stigma over them. So I'm just wondering how you form that hypothesis and why.
Right, so I decided to not include cases that were racially motivated, which are a big majority of those shootings that occur and show up in the media. When they are racially motivated, they're more likely to be driven up in the media coverage, which is why I chose to leave them out. The reason I decided to hypothesize that it would be greater for areas with greater white populations is because there are a disproportionate amount of mass shootings that occur in minority neighborhoods. As you can see in figure 1, there is a huge number of mass shootings that occur in majority Black neighborhoods compared to other neighborhoods. And we don't see all of those in the media. We don't see all of these 31 cases in Chicago affecting minority cases. And that is why I hypothesize that there is greater media coverage in areas with greater white populations.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Priya. And thank you so much to your internship host site, the Office of the California State Governor Gavin Newsom's office, for hosting you this summer. And so our next student is Karen Bowie, and she interned with the California Asian American and Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you and we can see your poster.
Hey, great. Hi, my name is Karen Bowie. Climate change is the most pressing issue of our time. As a state that claims to be the model for climate regulations, California is not rising to the climate challenge. Our state's climate centerpiece, cap and trade, is a market-based regulatory framework that sets a declining limit on greenhouse gas emissions. My research involves exploring the effectiveness and the equity of California's cap and trade system. I hypothesize that the system is effective yet inequitable because several research papers have demonstrated that although statewide emissions have decreased overall, in certain disadvantaged communities, emission rates have actually increased. To conduct my research, I paired 10 counties in California with 10 counties in Florida, a state that doesn't implement cap and trade, based on the county's similarity, socioeconomic status similarity. To test its effectiveness, I compared the change in ozone levels from 2012 to 2019 in these California's counties and Florida's counties. And I found mixed support for this hypothesis. I found that although ozone levels decreased more in California under the implementation of cap and trade relative to Florida, the reductions were extremely minor. To test the equity of the cap and trade system, I compared the change in ozone levels between counties of high socioeconomic status to the counties of low socioeconomic status to see whether the gap in ozone levels actually increased or decreased between these counties under the implementation of cap and trade. I also found mixed support for this hypothesis as well, because although ozone levels did decrease more in low SES counties, surprisingly, relative to Florida, the reductions were also minor. So given the limited findings of my study, cap and trade is neither significantly effective nor significantly inequitable as I had hypothesized. One suggestion I have is to bundle cap and trade, a statewide initiative with more local regulations to ensure that each local community's unique needs are met and addressed. This way, cap and trade can be more effective and more equitable. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen, for that great presentation. And if there is a question from the internship host site. Right, and then if not, over to our academic team. All right, Professor Betters.
All right, thank you, Cindy. Great job, Karen. It was a great presentation. I have a question about figure 4 over here. So I see that there's a negative value for California and a positive value for Florida. And I know it's difference in ozone between the high and low SES counties in each of these states, but what does it really mean for us? Like is the difference between the high and low SES counties like 1,000 cars worth of emissions, or what's the tangible meaning of that difference for California and for Florida?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I actually found a research study, and the research study found that a 0.05 ppm increase in ozone levels actually led to a 2 to 5% increase in hospital admissions for asthma. And so I would say that a 0.002 decrease in ozone levels is probably like a 0.05 decrease in hospital admission rates for asthma. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much for the answer there.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. And thank you so much, Professor Butters, for that question, as well as thanks to the California Asian American and Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus for hosting you this summer. And so our next student will be up is Anthony Exong, who interned with the Office of Sacramento City Council member Rick Jennings' office.
Screen share. Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Share my screen. Hey everybody, I'm Anthony. I did my project on salmon. If you ever had salmon in California, there's a high chance that it came from the Sacramento River. Salmon generates more than $500 million for California annually. With the California drought continuing and record-breaking temperatures returning, salmon in California are endangered as ever since the 90s, as seen in my timeline in figure 1. My hypothesis is pretty much that high weather temperatures kills off, quote unquote, the number of salmon spawns per year and leads to higher carcass counts per year. Evidence I gathered can be seen in figures 2 and 3. For figure 2, I created a scatter plot for 2 variables, natural and hatch carcasses from the winter run season of salmon. Natural meaning not raised by humans, and hatch meaning the opposite. I gathered both types of carcasses for the years 2003 to 2018. And I've compared it with the annual temperatures of the city of Redding. I chose the study because of its close proximity to the carcass counts. Surprisingly, I found no correlation between high weather temperatures and high carcass counts, although hatched carcass counts were slightly higher. For figure 2, I also created a scatter plot, but this time I had 4 variables: the Klamath River Basin, the Trinity River Basin, the Upper Sacramento River area from Red Bluff to Shasta Dam, and the whole Sacramento San Joaquin River system. I chose the Klamath River because of its farther proximity to the Upper Sacramento River, and I chose Trinity because of its closer proximity, so I could get a different perspective on the rivers and salmon spawns. But what I was really looking for is correlation between high weather temperatures and salmon spawns numbers from all of the rivers. For the weather temperatures, I used Eureka for the Klamath River Basin, Weaverville for the Trinity River Basin, and Redding for both the Upper Sacramento River area and the complete Sacramento San Joaquin River system, because most of the spawning happens near Redding. Again, surprisingly, I found no correlation between higher weather temperatures and spawn numbers. In fact, the Klamath River Basin arguably can be somewhat seen as the opposite. So the Klamath River Basin can be seen as having more spawn numbers at higher temperatures compared to the other rivers. These 2 findings indicate that there is no correlation between high weather temperatures and the number of salmon in the Sacramento River. More work and research needs to be done in the water themselves to find other environmental factors for salmon preservation. And that's it.
Great, thank you so much, Anthony, for that presentation. And so we do have a question from the audience. So Henry Atkinson.
Hi, Henry.
Hi, Anthony. So if we go back to the slide real quick. So just, I know in your, hold on, wait, come on. There we go. I know in your conclusions, you say more research needs to be done to see if there are other environmental factors. Did you examine any other variables than high temperature levels, or was it basically just the one variable study?
Just pretty much just the water temperature studies. I did evaluate like the water level temperatures, but then like the water level temperatures for the rivers are all the same annually, so they didn't really have an effect. Like every year for the past like 20-30 years, they've been the same. There's like no significant change. The only significant change is the temperature levels, weather temperature levels. So that's why I just chose the weather temperature levels.
So if you were to do further research on this, what type of variables do you think, just off the top of your head, do you think would be likely to show a correlation?
No doubt human involvement, because Churndo River Basin and the Klamath River Basin are more concentrated than the Sacramento River, as seen in my background. Yeah, so if I were to do more research, I would do more research on those two and compare with the Sacramento River, even though they both don't correlate with temperature and salmon spawn, just like Sacramento. But that's where I would start if I were to choose.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Anthony, for your great presentation, and thank you, Henry, for the question as well as for hosting Anthony this summer. Appreciate it. And so our next student is Sarah Jiang, and she interned this summer with the Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce.
Hello, can you see my screen?
Yeah, looks great. Thanks, Sarah.
All right, awesome. Hello, I'm Sarah from UC Riverside, and my research question is, how much does data affect California's homeless crisis? Homelessness is one of California's top issues, but we haven't been able to improve our situation much despite pouring billions of dollars towards homelessness relief in the past few years. One reason for this, according to the California State Auditor, could be that local homeless services don't always fully report data on who they helped and how, preventing us from being able to evaluate where we need to improve with our homeless services. Therefore, I hypothesize that the more comprehensive the data, the lower the homeless population will be. I created a multivariate regression model regressing homeless individuals per capita on shelter bed coverage rate, which was intended to measure data comprehensiveness. I also included unemployment rate and median single-family home prices as control variables. My findings were statistically suggestive of a weak negative relationship between my variables, which supports my hypothesis, although not very strongly. The model would be better had I been able to find data on all of California instead of using a convenience sample. As seen in the grayed out portions of Figure 1 on my poster, I could not find the data I needed for all parts of California like I had hoped to. My model also suggests that some of the measures I used for my variables may not have been very comprehensive, and there are likely to be additional factors affecting homelessness besides the ones I included in my model. With my findings, I suggest that local homeless service providers consider investing more towards their databases, and that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development consider increasing reporting requirements for said service providers. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Sarah, for that great presentation. And if there was a question from the internship host site. Right, and then if not, over to our academic team. Right, Professor Quila.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for this presentation. I was just wondering, if you were to in the future, do more research on this and add in more factors, what other factors do you think would potentially affect your outcome of interest, your homeless population per capita?
I think if I were to continue studying this in the future, I would focus more on finding better measures for the variables I did want to measure. For example, the data comprehensiveness, I think I only maybe captured a portion of what that really means by measuring bed coverage rate. And as well as median home prices, I wanted to incorporate the housing affordability crisis, but I'm not sure I captured that fully in my model by just using median single family home prices. So I think I would focus on that before adding additional variables.
Great, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for a great presentation. And thank you, Professor Quila, for the question, as well as many thanks to the Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce for hosting Sarah this summer. And so our next student is Santiago Milano.
Can you see my screen?
We can, and it's just starting right now in terms of the presentation.
One moment. Computer's a little slow. All right, there we go. Is that good? All right.
Great.
In a recent poll, homelessness was ranked as the third biggest issue for Californians, and yet we still do not have a consensus on what the best housing solutions are. 3 of the most common forms of housing for homeless are emergency shelter, which is the shortest term, rapid rehousing, which is medium term and includes supportive services, and transitional housing, which is the longest term and acts as a bridge to permanent housing. And so my research question is, out of these 3 forms of housing, which would be the most effective in reducing homelessness overall? My hypothesis was that while all would be effective, rapid rehousing would be the best because it is cost effective while still providing social services. My independent variables consisted of the percentage of the homeless population that has a corresponding bed for each kind of housing per state in the United States. And my dependent variable consisted of the percentage of the population that is homeless per state in the United States. And I included a control variable for median rental prices. I constructed these variables with data ranging from 2013 to 2019 from the US Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as the American Community Survey. My research design consisted of a linear regression, and using this regression, I found that while all of the methods did have an impact on homelessness and reducing it, as you can see in my regression table, emergency shelter was actually the most effective, which did not support the part of my hypothesis that said that rapid rehousing would be the most effective. So my policy suggestion is to continue research so we can reach more conclusive results than the ones that are in my study, although I did reach statistical significance. And that policymakers in California perhaps consider emergency shelter, looking at that as their best answer to the homeless crisis. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Santiago, for that great presentation. And if there's a question from the internship host site. All right, and if not, over to our academic team. All right, Dr. Kravitz.
Santiago, this is great. I have sort of a technical question since you were keen enough to provide regression results. It looks like the coefficients for all 3 interventions are, they're very close in magnitude, minus 0.08, minus 0.07, and minus 0.097. So were each of these variables coded in the same way? Were they structured in the same way? And how do we interpret these really small differences between the coefficients, or how are you interpreting them?
Sure. Well, yes, they were constructed in the same way. All of them, it's basically the ratio of the number of beds to the total homeless population. But I made it into a percent instead of just a ratio. And yeah, the difference is very small, which is partly why I think we need more research with more factors accounted for. What I'm interpreting is that since emergency shelter had the biggest effect, well, the biggest number by very little, but still, I'm saying that according to my study, is slightly more effective in reducing the overall population because it's a bigger negative number. But obviously that's not super conclusive, and which is why I recommend more research.
Great answer. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Santiago. And thank you, Dr. Kravitz, for that question. And thanks again to the Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce for also hosting Santiago this summer. And so with that, I'm going to say thank you everyone for attending. Congratulations to our students, but we're actually going to go ahead and stop the recording and we're going to move over into our open Q&A session. And so with that, Brooke, if you want to go ahead and stop the recording.